Hey guys, let's talk about the topic on everyone's mind since yesterday 11 plus PM. The phone has been buzzing on-stop. So, yes, it is the SSD thing where instead of 3 years, now it has increased back to the 2017 levels, or rather since the 2011 to 2017 levels of 4 years, starting from 16%, which is quite a hit because even at 4%, it is very painful for most people, especially investors. So let's take a look at what is really happening over here. This thing came from the MND yesterday night, 11 plus PM. And then what we are seeing over here is that this change will take effect for all residential properties purchased on or after 12 a.m. today. So basically, as expected, anytime the cooling measure comes down, it will be at 11 plus. They only give you maybe about 15 to 20 minutes to react. So if you are really desperate, if you are really kanchiong and then try to make the timeline and somehow you are able to, then good for you. But the large majority of the population, either they are already asleep or they won't be able to make the paperwork in time. So unfortunately, they may be affected if they are really out there for speculation. And as illustrated over here, it will not affect HDB owners due to the MOP period of 5 years. And what you can see over here will be the rates from now on. Okay, in case you're wondering, is it that big of a difference? Because I'm looking to flip. If you're not looking to flip, don't worry, this does not affect you. Then we take a look at this article over here. This is basically the same thing, and what we mean by sub-sale it means that units that have not been completed. That means units that have not reached the CSC status, because after they reach the CSC status, it will be considered the resale status. But if they are registered as sub-sale, basically it just means that probably it has already hit the maybe up to the TOP stage or even before that, but before the certificate of statutory completion is issued. Then back for a little bit of history, SSD was previously first introduced back in 1996. So it's definitely not something new at all for those people who are new to the market, especially the younger people who is probably in the 20s plus. They haven't really know about the market previously. Last time, 1 in every 5 transactions involve a sub-sale deal. So that means if let's say you have 20,000, you have 4,000 that are sub-sale, which is very substantial. It's 20%. Now it's not even that close. And then previously it was rolled back because previously the market was a lot more erratic, and then government weren't that strict, they weren't that hard up on the market. So once the market started to show signs of cooling down, right, then they decided to relieve the measure. But then again, back in 2010, it got reintroduced back again, and then it was then it extended to the 4 years at the 16% for the first year thing. And once it reached 2017, because of that long lull between 2013 to 2017, the government decided to relieve the market a little bit and then reduce the 4 years to 3 years, and then starting from 12% instead of 16%. And as such, if they want to flip, usually they have to wait at least 3 years instead of just flipping options, like, or rather maybe even exercise already, then they can just flip before the completion. Some of them happened that before. That's more towards the 2009 2008 era, I think, where maybe units like probably metropolitan, those were the days lah. And what we are seeing over here is that sellers for the sub-sale people earn a median gross gain of 200 plus thousand. Some people may think it's a lot of money. Yes, it is quite a lot of money, but it's ultimately dependent on your ROI, how much money you're putting in and how much money you're getting out. If you're buying a very small unit or small quantum, this may be a very high amount. But if you're buying a very high amount, then 200 plus thousand is actually not very lucrative. So it really depends. Such a statement, I would say, is very vague in a sense. And this past year, we have also saw a gradual decline in sub-sale activity really, because back in 2023, there were a lot of buildings that were completed. There were a lot of developments that were previously had constructions delay, and then one shot a lot of them TOP together, especially the mega developments, and that caused a lot of supply, a lot of sub-sale supply, which I will believe most people will buy a sub-sale because they want to be ready to move in. They want it to be brand new, and then they can move in ASAP, and that's why they go for a sub-sale. Over here, what we are seeing over here is that last time from this period, because that was a whole bunch of new launch, and then during this period of time it was still the construction phase, right? So definitely we won't see much sub-sales, especially during the COVID period. Back then it was just 82 units per quarter. That equates to maybe about 300 plus per year. But then back to 2022, 2023 and 2024, you can see that it has from 300 plus per year, it has increased up to 700 plus, 1,300 plus, and even to 1,400 plus last year. So pretty much last year was the peak. But if we express it from a percentage point of view wise, 2022 it was maybe about only 3.5%, and then 2023 6.8%, 2024 6.5%. So if you look at it from a proportion point of view, the proportion had to pick back in 2023, which correlates to what I was mentioning just now when there was a construction delay previously, and then it resulted in that whole bunch of them all TOP around 2023, which increased a large amount of supply for vacant brand new units, and which kind of explains the sub-sale activity lah. Okay, and then what we are seeing later, I will show you in the next slide, is that we are seeing flash estimate for the most recent second quarter that private home prices are flattening further. It seems that it's flattening, but it doesn't mean that it is showing signs of really slowing and going down, because it really depends on what kind of development is upcoming and how the market is reacting, especially with the recent drama from the US side, and also even from the Middle Eastern countries fighting the war. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty. So, and as such, maybe it is flattening a little bit, and some of you may think, hey, how come the government will want to introduce cooling measure at this point if it's flattening already? I think what the government is trying to do is trying to be proactive, it's trying to be preemptive instead of reactive. They don't want to only throw out the cooling measures when the market is really really overheated, so they don't want that to be overly happening too early in the first place. So, and then what happened over here is that you can see that previously all along we have a lot of cooling measures. I just extracted this chart only, so you can see that back in ever since the COVID period, how many cooling measures do we have? We have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 from today. So government has been trying very hard to curb this property spike over here, because they know that it is not sustainable in this market. You realize that most of the time when the cooling measures were announced, there's always this phrase that they say they want to promote a long sustainable property market. They don't want the market to crash, but they also don't want it to run too fast. So that is always the aim, and I think that that is what we should be striving for also. And that's why I say this is the 9th over here, and this is the most recent second quarter estimate. You can see that it's still slightly trending up a little bit, which is not exactly a very good sign in the government's eye, because you look at how much it has increased over the past, I would say, 5 years. Back then, 2017, when SSD was reduced from 4 years to 3 years, note this was very important. After it got reduced, right, then there was a surge because of the en bloc fever, because suddenly a lot of developers took it as a sign that, hey, let's go and chiong, and then we go and chiong already. And what happened is, when you have en bloc, you release a lot of money into the market, and as such, what happens is that that amount of money goes back to the market, right? Whether is it a new sale, resale, but it basically inflates the market, and this is what happened over here. And I believe just a few days back, I mean, it's just my own personal point of view, is that 1st of July, the news that Thomsonville condo was given the green light to en bloc. So you see, after 2 days, 1 or 2 days of from the news of that happening, then this new cooling measure struck. So could it be the sign that the government actually don't want the en bloc activity? So for those people who are gunning for en bloc, unfortunately, I think this may not be the right time. This may not be the right climate for en bloc to be happening. So if your condo is trying for en bloc, unless the price is very reasonable, if you yourself know that it's going to be quite expensive, chances of it happening is going to be very very low, because we are seeing quite a few condos where they are putting up tenders but almost no developers are bidding. And that is the reality on the ground, because they themselves also know that the government is doesn't really want the money to be released and flooded back into the market at this point when the property market is still on a high over here. Okay, and that's why we are seeing a lot of GLS coming up over the next few months. And also, even for the upcoming few second half of the year, we are seeing quite a lot of launches together. And this is also one of the reasons why the government introduces this SSD in order to stop people from trying to flip this. So moving forward, we will see probably a lot less subsale, but it doesn't stop them from selling at the 4th year point. So that's why if you're trying to say that this measure eliminates the speculator, I don't think that is happening, unfortunately. But will it reduce? I think definitely yes. So let's take a look at why this is happening. This is a subsale development, just up to all the way up to maybe the start of this year. After that, it was considered a resale already. That's why you see some resales over here, some sub-sales over here. And you can see why it is so lucrative for them to go for this kind of sub-sale activity. So some units are considered resale, some units are considered sub-sale, but generally lump them together because it's about the same timing. This one makes about 200 plus, which is okay. This one makes about 800 plus. This one makes about 1 mil. This one makes about 100 plus. So it really depends on what you buy and when do you buy. And if I'm going to make 1 million, I don't think I'm going to be hard up on the fact that, hey, did I make 1 million over 4 years? Did I make 1 million over 3 years? Sure, it make some different to most people, but I believe 90% of the people won't be complaining that, last time I should have bought during the 3 year period. Last time, I think as long as you make 1 million, you are already way above the average of the market. So I think there's nothing much to be complaining about lah. It's like, some people are just like, last time I should have bought the Bitcoin or whatever. I mean, if you buy, you buy. If you didn't buy, you missed it. Okay, that's unfortunate. But I mean, I did buy it, but did I missed it? Yes. Did I fully regret? No. I'm just like, okay, I got other means. I bought my property appreciated. So yes, I may not make ROI as much as the Bitcoin side, but it doesn't make me miserable in that sense, because I mean, at least most important thing is that my assets are still making money. I think that's the most important part. So same goes for all these. I shall not go point by point, or rather transaction by transaction. You can see that it's quite lucrative for them. That's why they are going into all these sub-sales. Then we look at another one also. Same goes for this. This one, average 400 plus up to maybe even 900 plus. So as you can see over here, and what is happening is that, how come the government doesn't really want this kind of thing happening? Yes, it releases a lot of wealth into the market, it releases a lot of wealth into families, but at the same time it drives up the market and make it harder and harder for the younger or newer HDB upgraders to be able to afford the so-called Singaporean dream. So they need to be able to balance out what is the right thing to do versus quenching the thirst of people who really really want to make it rich. On the other hand, regarding flipping, a lot of people think that, what do we mean by flip? 3 years, let's take a look at how many days it is. It is just slightly over about 1,100 days. 4 years, you'll be looking at 1,460 days. So how does it make an impact on the resale market? When it comes to sub-sale, a lot of people only think about the sub-sale, the 4 years thing only affect the sub-sale. No, actually, because if you look at it, if you are able to look at some of the resales, you realize that actually this whole flipping thing is also happening on the resale side. This is the first example for resale number 1. Over here, we are seeing how come I cross all these. You can see that people are making some profits. Some may be very attractive, some may not be very attractive. Later I'll show you a more attractive one. But what we are seeing over here is that they are cancelled basically did not make it past the 4-year mark, which is, remember this, 1460. So now we are remembering this number 1460 as a magic number in the first place. So this 1460, this one crossed, so this one crossed. So that means out of this whole list of 20 units, you can see that obviously all these are flippers. They flip before the 4-year mark. So imagine if this new cooling measure comes down, this whole thing will not be possible other than these 2 units. So you can see that what's happening over here is that government is trying to manage all these people. They're trying to, in a way, eliminate or reduce the chances of this kind of thing happening. This guy definitely kena SSD lah, for sure lah. But maybe unfortunate fact, he may be forced to sell. That's why I think it's important for you to be informed of what you are actually buying. And a lot of people would like to say that, hey, I'm buying this one for a forever home. Yes, it may be a forever home, but you never know what's going to happen. Maybe some people lose job, some people they meet very crazy nasty neighbors, they really want to move. So all kinds of reasons. It's most important that you get the right development that is safe for you, so that you safeguard your own assets if you, in cases of where you are supposed to be, basically when you end up in a for sale situation. Okay, so this is the first resale. Second one, this you can see is a lot more lucrative resale. And then what happens is that this one did not make it past the 3 SSD. The rest more or less made it past the 3 SSD. But you can see this whole list, only one person make it past the 4-year mark. So this person make it past the 4-year. Does it make him a non-flipper? No. Because it seems that he is still part of the flipping crowd. That means slightly over 4 years, he more or less had the intention that he's going to move on after that initial 3 to 4 years, because not everyone is just camping to sell at the 3-year mark. In fact, a lot of times I will advise the clients to not think of just flipping at the 3-year mark, because quite a lot of profits are actually somewhere in between. Whether is it 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, it really depends on the development. It really depends on what is happening around the development and also on the market sentiment. That's why don't always think of just selling at the 3-year mark. And then moving forward, it also means that do not always think of just selling at the 4-year mark. Alright, so this one is another resale. Last one also, out of this whole list, this one and also even this one, the last one that is unprofitable, didn't make it past the 3-year mark. Only one guy make it past the 4-year mark. The rest are at the 3-year mark. So you can see that actually the flipping phenomenon is also happening on the resale side. That's why I think it's not really fair to just say that, it's only happening on the subsale. Government is trying to curb on the subsale. No, because there are also a lot of people trying the same thing on the resale side. And by doing this cooling measure, I think it is a good thing, because you are trying to weed out all these people. Yes, the market likely moving forward will be growing at a slower rate, but I think it is okay, because in the first place, the next generation will be more able to catch the train. And the other thing is, once you weed out the speculators, some speculators, because they just want a quick buck, but their holding power may not be as strong. And what happens is sometimes they may anyhow sell. And these are the kind of people that you do not want. Okay, and that's the purpose of me showing you, because it's just, you have to be clear that it is not just the subsale market, and also it also happening on the resale market. So basically, in conclusion, what we are seeing over here is that there is a small proportion of subsale. The last year it was just 6.5, 2023 was 6.8. So generally it's still a smaller proportion, but that is not including those that I showed you just now over here, the resale guys. So maybe if we added on, that could be up to maybe about 10%, which is generally a small amount compared to just now when I first showed you 1996. It was 1 in every 5, which is 20%. And this subsale, especially subsale, we are not talking about the resale, because resale you have to go for full monthly payment right from the start, right? If you are looking at a subsale, especially if they are buying those at a new launch, their outlays are lower. So I think if you're asking them to hold from 3 year to 4 year, generally most of them are not really affected, because the outlay is low. And over the first, I would say 1 to 2 years, probably they will be saving up quite a lot of money. And as such, it won't be too taxing on them to hold that extra 1 year. That's why moving forward, I don't think these guys that are buying the subsidy, they are buying, or rather buying the new launch, the new sales, they will be genuinely really affected by this. And next, but on the other hand, those that are on the resale, especially those that are on tight margins, and they don't monitor their finances well, they are very highly rental dependent, and sometimes when they have face months of rental, vacancy rental, and then they don't buy the right product, I think very likely they will be financially challenged very early, because first of all, your money installment starts right from the day that your completion date begins. And then sometimes, like what I said, you have a vacancy, you also have ongoing causes, all your interest, maintenance fees, property tax, income tax, all these you have to manage very well. So those on tight margins and not having a very big war chest at the side for rainy days, they will be affected because they are forced to hold another 1 more year. But generally wise, we are facing, like what I said, a small proportion of flipper crowd. Most people will still be buying for own stay, and as such they should be, I will believe lah, I will say that most people are still generally financially prudent because of the TDSR that is imposed by the government. And then next, lowering interest rate, what we are seeing currently right now is that we are already seeing low 2 to maybe even as low as 2% for interest rates. At least the stress from the monthly repayments and also the expenses are not as high as the 4+%, which is only about 1+ years ago, which was quite crazy. Even I was feeling, I mean, it's not like I was dying, but every month you're paying that, they are paying the extra few $1,000s. It doesn't feel fair lah. It doesn't feel justified lah. But now you're paying almost half. So I think it makes a lot of difference. It frees up a lot of cash for extra stuff. It frees up a lot of cash for a small little luxuries. And I mean small luxuries. I don't mean buy big cars, that kind of thing. I mean, like, maybe you can afford to eat, I don't know, eat cai fan a little bit more, add one more eat one more dish. Some of you maybe want to order fish. I'm still not rich enough to go and order fish. So but yeah, generally I think this seller stamp duty is probably just a warning shot, I feel, to speculators, but it is unlikely to cause market distress. It's very, very unlikely to crash the market because of the points that I mentioned over here. So if you are looking for property, I would say please make sure you try to be very conversant of the market, try to know more about it. If not, go and seek professional help, and protect yourself, because there are a lot of overpriced things in this all-time high market. So I think it is very important that you be financially prudent to go and look at the right properties. You never know whether are we at the next all-time high, and will this market be actually stagnant because of the existing measures. Okay, that will be all we have for today, and then till then, see you guys. Take care. Bye bye.